Sharada Sharadamboja Vadanam Vadanambuje Sarvada Sarvadasmakam Sannidhim Kriyat Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ajnanam Jannavi Tirtham Vidya Tirtham Vivekinam Sarvesham Sukadam Tirtham Bharati Tirthamashraye Vidya Vinaya Sampannam Vitaragam Vivekinam Vande Vedanta Tattvajnam Vidushekara Bharati Sadguru Charanaravindha Bhyam Namaha Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. So welcome to the fifth session on Dharma Shastra with an introduction to Nyaya Shastra talks. We have with us Sri Alwar Mahodaya. He started with the text in the last session. So he will continue with those talks today. I think he's okay. I didn't see that he has an audio. He's trying to connect through audio, right?
That's correct. Looks like we are waiting for his audio. Let's give a few minutes.
Sure.
You can text him and see if that's coming in.
Yeah, maybe he has to reconnect, I think.
You can put on that
Okay. Can you indicate? Yeah. Can you indicate when he's?
I'm texting him.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
I think he's there now. He's there.
Namaste, Mahodaya. So we can start now.
Hello. Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Namaste. You can start now. I think we just finished the prayer now. So.
Okay. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Vishnum Bhasvat Kiritangadamalaya Gada Kalpaharojvalangam Shroni Bhusha Suvaksho Manimakuta Bha Kundalair Manditangam Hastodya Chanka Chakram Bhujagadamamanam Dita Kaushe Yavasam Vidyotadbhasamudyatina Karasadusham Padmasamstham Namami. Namah Paramarshibhyo Namah Paramarshibhyaha. So in the last 5 lectures or so, we have had a fairly good introduction to what Dharma Shastra is all about. We have also examined the various aspects of Dharma, its definitions as given in the different Shastras, and several other aspects associated with Dharma that we need to know as an introduction. So hereafter, we will be going into the individual aspects of Dharma so that we will have a fairly good idea of what the Dharma Shastras are all about. Within 1 or 2 minutes, I will re-encapsulate what has been mentioned until now. As I mentioned earlier, Dharma essentially means Yataha Abhyudaya Nishreyasa Siddhihi sa Dharma. That which bestows on us prosperity. It means both material and spiritual prosperity, as well as salvation or liberation in due course. That is known as Dharma. So all factors that contribute to this can be brought under the umbrella of Dharma. So I had a detailed discussion with some of my colleagues and also some of the senior scholars with regard to what all should be presented here in this forum in the context of Dharma Shastra. So the most important aspects that are relevant today, even today, are the food habits, the sleep habits, the type of respect we have to show to our elders, then also the societal values that we have to upkeep, because these values do not change, even though society has vastly changed. So I have prioritized these aspects, what all should be discussed here, because as such, Dharma Shastra is a huge ocean. Yesterday, I was just reading the Manusmriti specifically for this purpose. And just about the student-teacher relationship or the Guru-Shishya relationship, it has about 50 shlokas, which can be explained over 10 to 12 hours. So much of content is there. But many of it may not be relevant today because it was mentioned in the context of the Gurukula, where the student used to stay in the teacher's house or the teacher's ashram and perform certain duties. So it mentions aspects like how the Guru should treat his Shishya and also how the Shishya should behave in the presence of his Guru. For example, it is mentioned, Nicha Shayya Sananchasya Nityam Syat Guru Sannithau. So always the disciple should sit in a seat that is lower than the seat of the Guru. Similarly, the teacher should actually have a higher, the bed of the teacher should be at a higher level and the bed of the disciple should be at the lower level. So all these things are mentioned, but some of them are relevant today, some of them are not relevant today, because in a university scenario or in a scenario where you go to a college, there is no question of the teacher and disciple sleeping in the same room or in the same building. But the main spirit behind these things is that the Shishya should always be subservient to the Guru. And secondly, it is not only how the transfer of knowledge happens from the Guru to the Shishya. It is not merely through words. Even by the presence of the Guru and the Shishya together, the transfer of knowledge can happen. That is how new ideas actually come into the mind of the Shishya. And when he tells it in front of the Guru, then the Guru may become very surprised. How did this idea come to you? Because I have not told it to you directly. So these kinds of transformations of knowledge and transformation of the molding of the individual can happen merely by the Shishya and Guru being together. In the same place, they eat together, they walk together, they sleep. And also, most of the time, they spend together with each other. So that is why in the Vedas, I will just complete this and go to the main topic. When actually the process of education starts, it is mentioned that the famous mantra we all generally know has to be chanted by both the Guru and Shishya. Sahanau avatu, sahanau bhunaktu, sahaviryam karavavahai, tejasvinavadhitamastu, tejasvinau adhitamastu, ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So this is the mantra that the Guru and Shishya, both of them have to chant, both in the beginning and at the end of the class. So it is actually a prayer towards the Supreme Lord that Saha Nau Avatu. Let the Supreme Lord protect both of us together. Saha Nau Bhunaktu. let him protect both of us, to let him nourish both of us. And Saha Viryam Karavavahai. We have embarked on a long journey. It's a spiritually rewarding journey because it is a journey towards self-realization or Atma Sakshatkara or whatever you want to call it. So it is bound to have a lot of obstacles. Therefore, it requires a great amount of wherewithal, perseverance, etc. to traverse this path. Therefore, it says, Saha Viryam Karavavahi Virasya Bhavaha Viryam. So it requires a great amount of valor, a great amount of perseverance, a great amount of strength to traverse this path. So we both of us will do it together. And Tejasvino Adhitamastu. It requires a lot of splendor in the sense that whatever is required to acquire knowledge, acquisition of knowledge is the most difficult thing in this world. So it requires a lot of qualities, like in Sanskrit it is mentioned, Vidya Turanam na sukham na nidra. When a person becomes enamored of knowledge, he will neither care for any other pleasures of life, nor will he care for any type of happiness or anything like sleep, etc. So Tejasvino Adhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. So let us not, under any circumstances, have any animosity between us. Today we understand in the university scenario, especially when PhDs are being done, there is the teacher and this student, or the guide and the researcher are at loggerheads. I have come across several instances. So that should not happen, because always there should be a good relationship between the teacher and the student. So Ma Vidvishavahai Om Sha. So these are all the values of the teacher-student relationship which are mentioned in the Dharma Shastras, which you have to imbibe. But coming back to the original topic, after deep thought on what are the most important aspects that need to be presented, so first we have to cleanse our Ahara Paddhati. Because in the Vedas it is mentioned as Ahara Shuddhau Sattva Shuddhihi Sattva Shuddhau Dhruva Smritihi Smritinambhe Sarvagrantinam Vipramokshaha. So the most important aspect to attain spiritual progress, or to progress in the spiritual path, is to have pure food. So if you have pure food, automatically your body will be cleansed. Because what is ahara? Ahriyate iti ahara. So that which is, the literal meaning of the word ahara is that which is consumed, or that which is taken inward. So ahara essentially, though generally means, ahara generally means food, it also means that we consume through our sense organs. What we see, what we think, what we touch, what we taste, what we smell, etc. So when this is pure, when the intake, so in computer language, we can say when the output depends upon the input. So whatever has to happen in the body depends upon the intake or the ahara, or that which is consumed. So when ahara is pure, when ahara becomes pure, the body becomes pure, the mind becomes pure, because we call it as karana and kalebara. That means the body is known as the kalebara, and karanas are the sense organs, including the mind. When these become pure, then what happens? Our body becomes eligible. It acquires the capacity to have divine experiences. So the cause of divine experiences is what we do in the form of dhyana or yoga, And also it might be of different types, like Japa Yoga, for example. We have to chant the Gayatri mantra that is given to us after Upanayana is done. Then one might chant the Panchakshari mantra, Ashtakshari mantra, Dvarashakshari mantra, etc. So yoga is of several types. I am not going to that detail now. So each japa or each mantra, when it is chanted, it has a Rishi, Devata and Chandas, and also the deity that is to be meditated upon. But if we have to concentrate properly on the mantra and also concentrate upon the deity and do the japa, it requires a huge amount of concentration. So if we have to meditate, it requires a huge amount of concentration, and that concentration is extremely difficult to get because the mind is so much wavering. So in order to overcome that wavering nature of the mind, what we have to do is we have to purify our ahara. That's what the Chandogya Upanishad says. So it says ahara shuddhau sattva shuddhihi. Sattva shuddhau dhruva smriti. So sattva means the entire being of the human being. That is the body, sense organs, mind, etc. When this happens, dhruva smriti, then a person is able to concentrate properly and engage in the task of meditation. And then what happens? Smritirambhe sarva granthinam vipramokshaha. When this happens, when a person is deeply established in jhana, that is why in the Puranas it is mentioned as jhanena atmani pashyam. So one transcends all the bondages. Sarva granthinam vipramoksha. Granthi is a bondage. Smritirambhe sarva granthinam vipramoksha. And the person ultimately attains salvation. So this is very well established in the work called Yogatharavali by Shankaracharya. It's a very beautiful work which has only 28 stanzas, but extremely well enumerated. And only an Acharya having the stature of Shankaracharya could have authored this Yogatharavali, which gives details of how the process of dhyana has to take place, etc. So the basis for all of these is nothing but pure food, which is what is mentioned in Dharma Shastra. The Smriti Granthas, a huge portion of Smriti Granthas is devoted to the purity of food, how it has to be taken, under what circumstances food has to be eaten, and which are the circumstances that are not conducive for having lunch, etc. So the field of food, though it is very mundane, it actually transcends several, or it cuts across several fields. Like food is concerned with Ayurveda, food is concerned with yoga, food is concerned with Vedanta. Because in the Vedanta, we have an adhikarana, very interesting adhikarana. I will mention about this and then go to the main topic, because this is very important. So there is a adhikarana called Sarvanna Anumat Adhikarana, which is very beautifully commented upon in a similar manner by Shankaracharya and Ramanujacharya. So a very pious Brahmin is actually passing through a forest and he becomes extremely hungry. And in those days, we did not have these hotels or places where you could get food. So in that place, on the way, when he becomes very hungry, he feels like as if he is going to die immediately, because he has not had any food for the last 1 or 2 days, it seems. Minute details are not available in the Upanishad. The story is found in the Upanishad itself, and it is discussed in the Brahma Sutras by Sage Vyasa and commented upon by Shankaracharya, etc. So then immediately a Chandala, or a person who belongs to that community, he is having in a in a bag that is made of skin, animal skin. He has a particular eatable. So immediately the person, the great sage, who is actually about to faint because of lack of food, he immediately asks the Chandala and he consumes two handfuls of food. And he says, thank you very much. Then the disciple asks the Guru, sir, you have only taken two handfuls. Why have you not taken a little bit more? It could have nourished you more. He says, I have taken only that much that can help me sustain until I go to the next village where I can get some food. So it says, Sarvannanumatishcha pranatyaye taddarshana. So there are several instances like these found in the Dharma Shastras where it says certain foods are permitted during certain times. So we have to understand all these nuances, and then we will have a comprehensive understanding of what Dharma Shastra is all about. Why I am mentioning this is the aspect of food is discussed in several Shastras, like Vedanta and Nyaya also to some extent. Then Dharma Shastra, of course, we have a lot of information. Ayurveda is an encyclopedia about food. So how food has to be taken, how it has to be prepared, what are the vessels to be prepared, what are the conditions, who has to prepare the food, what are the qualities of the cook, etc., etc., etc. So we will see it from a very commonistic point of view, from the point of view Dharma Shastra. Just 1 minute, I will open this slide and show it to you, because I have prepared some slides to explain it in detail.
Share ahale. Yes,
Just 1 minute.
no problem. Yeah.
Now I think you can see.
Yes, we are good. Thank you.
So as I mentioned, I have covered these points. Role of food in our life, need for rules governing our food habits, how food plays a huge role in spiritual evolution. I have just given some information about this, and some rules governing various aspects of food. So according to, as I mentioned, according to Nyaya Dharma Shastra and also Ayurveda, 3 pillars of wellness have been mentioned. Manusmriti also mentions this, and even the Ayurvedic text mentioned about this. Ayurvedic text mentioned about this from the point of view of health alone, that is physical health. Whereas the Manusmriti and other Dharma Shastra works, they talk about it in the context of spiritual evolution also. So 3 pillars of wellness is, one is balanced food, balanced sleep, and some people use the word continence, whether it's the correct word or not, but to put it in a very literal sense, moral, healthy, sexual life. Moral and healthy, both are very important. So the food tradition, so the Dharma Shastras also mention, for example, when you take the Bhagavad Gita itself, it mentions about Sattvika Ahara, Rajasa Ahara and Tamasa. So Sattvika Ahara, it says Rasyaha, Snigdhaha, Tatha Hridyaha, Aharaha, Sattvika Priya. And then it says these are the Rajasic foods. And also it says these are the Tamasic foods. So the when it says Rasyaha, Snigdhaha, Tatha Hridyaha, so the concepts of food and nutrition of India. So not only food, nutrition is also a unique aspect or very important aspect of food. So these are propounded by the sages in the Dharma Shastras about 5,000 years. It's very, very important aspect. And then, before we go to the individual, the power of and productivity of a nation depends upon strength, health, and character of its citizens. And food and nutrition play a direct and significant role as preventive and curative of diseases. So what happens is, when you read the Taittiriya Upanishad, in the Bhrigu, after the process of how the young aspirant, spiritual aspirant Bhrigu learns what is the Brahman, Supreme Brahman or the God, 3 Anuvakas are devoted to the greatness of Anna or food. Annam Bahukurvita, Tasmadhyaya Kaya Vidya Bhakvanam Prapnyat, Annam Naparichakshita, Annam Bahukurvita, Annam Naninjat. So the first Anuvaka is Annam Naninjat, etc. Then you have Annam Bahukurvita, then Annam Naparichakshita, etc. So what is the relationship between having a lot of food and spiritual aspects? So that is why I said food plays a very, very important role as far as spiritual evolution is concerned. That is why, though the Taittiriya Upanishad is exclusively devoted to the spiritual pursuits, 3 Anuvakas in the Bhrigu are devoted to the importance and greatness of food, how one should actually be disposed towards food. So it says, Tasmadhyaya Kaya Vidya Bhakvanam Prapnyat Aradhyasman Namitya Takshate, etc. Very, very beautiful. It has to be explained in great detail. And also, it says, don't deprive any person of food if it is in your hands. So, the main aspect is food and nutrition are medical tools by themselves, and they are useful in the treatment and management of diseases also. So jokingly they say earlier food was medicine. Today medicine is food. Because many a times you see elderly people, every day they consume, as per the allopathic treatments, they consume about 15 to 20 tablets a day. So they will say, I am having some heart problem, so I will have this blood thinner. Then when I take a blood thinner, it will result in constipation. For that, I have to have another tablet. Then it will also result in a headache. So to prevent that headache, I have to have another tablet. So medicine itself is food. Instead of having idli, dosa and other things, they will have 15 or 20 tablets which will fill their stomach. So earlier it was not like that. It was actually food itself was medicine. So in Kannada there is a beautiful saying which says, Ahara Ballavanike Rogavinda. A person who knows his food will never become diseased. He will never have any disease. So food and nutrition help in the shaping of the mind, consciousness and psyche of the human beings. So in this there are several issues. In this context, what is the difference between prasadam, that is offered to the Lord in the temple, and ordinary food that is cooked in a hotel? There is a huge amount of difference if we can actually understand the nuances of food. This is a very, very important issue. Of course, we have not, most of the time we don't think about these things. And the role of food and nutrition is very significant in the spiritual development of man, leading to liberation. So I have explained this in some detail, but it requires a lot of explanation still. So I will not go into that right now. So I have this also I have explained in detail. I'll just go to the next slide. I'll come to this one second. I'll just explain the yes, I'll come to this first. So now in the Dharma Shastras, what they have done is very, very interesting. How to achieve purity of Ahara Shuddho Sattva Shuddhi, I just mentioned now, as mentioned in the Upanishads. So they call it as Jati Dushta, Kriya Dushta, and Kala Dushta, etc. So when we talk about consuming such foods affect the capacity of the mind to concentrate and also affects general health in a severe manner. Some of these have been scientifically proven today. But today, I would like to add a disclaimer immediately. So today our food habits have greatly changed due to several circumstances in which we are. But so kindly don't mistake me. I have just mentioned what is mentioned here in the works. So Jati Dushta is those foods that are impure due to their commonality or due to their jati or due to their, I do not like to use the word caste, but due to their origin, that would be the right word. So it is onions, garlic, radish, drumsticks, black grains except for sesame and udad. Then white asafoetida, that is what we call as perungayam in Tamil, and mushrooms. So these are all actually called as Rajasic and Tamasic foods. So when we consume onion and garlic, it is well known, well noticed, well experimented by people who have done that. It will actually reduce the capacity of the mind to think. And I have come across several people who are yoga practitioners and who have told me that the day when they consume onion, their mind is not as alert as it usually is. So they can very clearly understand the difference when they consume onion and garlic, how it actually affects the proper functioning of the mind. Secondly, it also affects the what is known as the hygiene of the mouth and other organs. So it results in a foul smell, and many times we feel when we go near a person who has consumed onion and garlic, it gives a very foul smell, so you have to be very careful. We feel very bad. Then the question is raised. It's a very, very important aspect, very interesting one. So the Ayurvedic works give a great deal of information and recommend the consumption of onion and garlic under circumstance as medicines. So while Dharma Shastra prohibits the consumption of onion and garlic totally, how is it that the Ayurveda works talk about onion and garlic they say that they are very great in terms of medicinal properties and have preventive and curative aspects. So this is the apparent contradiction between the two. Then a very beautiful verdict is given in this regard. So it is finally mentioned that as a food, onion and garlic are prohibited. As a medicine, they are permitted. So very beautifully, the seeming contradiction has been resolved in this case. Then foods that are rendered impure by means of kriya. Once again, today it might be a matter of conjecture that has been mentioned, but food that has come into contact with women under menstrual cycle. This is very, very specifically mentioned in the Dharma Shastra, so nobody should mistake it. I have mentioned it as it is mentioned in Dharma Shastra. But today we have certain scientific experiments to prove that women under the women who are under the menstrual cycle it is nothing but a medical condition. So in traditional households even today, they are actually kept in a separate room or something like that. So the women liberation people may call it as discrimination. It is not discrimination, it is distinction. So today, in the context of Corona or COVID-19, you say people have to be isolated. They have to be isolated for 2 weeks. So this isolation, you are not discriminating against them. So since it is a medical condition that can affect others, they have to be kept in isolation. That's all. Afterwards, they become normal. Similarly, the Dharma Shastras talk much about the Rajo Dosha, or women who are on the menstrual cycle, and say they have to be given rest. And they have to be, today we don't have that concept in the Western countries. It did not exist, except for in some countries, because I have read in the online that nearly 40 to 50 countries, even today, they give leave to women who are working and who are under the menstrual cycle. So in India, they were kept in isolation for those 3 days, not because of any discrimination or anything like that, because they needed rest. So this has been well proved in a book by a person called Nitin Sridhar, who has researched all the aspects, including the modern medical aspects, and has given a very beautiful account of this. So food that has come into contact with women under menstrual cycle is not to be consumed. Water that is rendered impure by various means. Rice and other such items that have been sold. So each of these requires a lot of explanation. Because today we are not going to grow rice. We can only purchase it. But earlier there was a state where predominantly Brahmins were the owners of the land. And the farmers used to do all the farming and get the rice and offer it to the Brahmins. And also there was the barter system. So there was no question of currency, etc. So when rice is actually sold and purchased, then the quality of the rice changes. But that can be understood only by a person who is sensitive enough to it. Today, since we have lost all our sensitivity, it is actually, we cannot actually distinguish between any foodstuff, whether it is pure or impure, etc. And then food that is kept in or consumed in darkness. This is very important. Because earlier when we were young, when we were having food, if the power went off, our elders used to say, just close your hand on the plate and only start eating after there is some other light, a lamp is lit or something like that. So food should not be consumed when it is dark, or food that is kept in total darkness should not be consumed. So there is a possibility of some insects or something falling into it, or several other issues that are easily knowable. Then foods that are rendered impure by means of time. So grains that are more than 3 years old. Rice and betel leaves that are more than 1 month old. So earlier, when rice was consumed or taken for cooking, raw rice, before it is actually converted from paddy to rice, the paddy should be kept for about 6 months. So it was earlier kept in a particular type of vessel or in a particular room which was devoted for that purpose. So over time, the quality of the paddy changes. And after it has been stored for 6 months, that paddy has to be converted into rice, or that the chaff has to be removed. Nowadays we have mills. Earlier in the Vedic times, they used to actually pound it and take off the chaff. For that, several mantras were prescribed. That was a huge process altogether. But that had specific qualities that that are not available from the rice that is converted in the rice mills today. And earlier in my younger days, when I used to go with my elders to the shop, they used to ask, is it old paddy or new paddy? So only after ensuring that the paddy was kept for so many days, they used to take it and then make it converted into rice. So several issues are there. Now, today, fortunately, we have several scientific tools to validate all these things. And for example, now I am associated with our institution called Transdisciplinary University. It's called the University of Transdisciplinary Health Sciences, where each and every aspect of these, like those mentioned in the Ayurveda, are being scientifically tested as per the currently prevalent parameters, and they are being published. And all the Ayurvedic theories are being validated. So we have today we have facilities to validate the theories of Ayurveda and see how they are relevant, and they stand the test of time. I have several examples. I will not go into them because that will become a totally different topic altogether. I'll just mention one so that you will get an idea of what it is. So in Ayurveda, there is a herb called Shankapushpa, and it is mentioned as a memory enhancer. So how to test this? So the Transdisciplinary University entered into an MOU with the National Center for Biological Sciences, which is the premier most institute in India to working in biological sciences. And then they had a detailed discussion with regard to how to validate whether this herb Shankapushpi is a memory enhancer or not. Then they devised experiments. So as it is done, they had one group of rats. They devised all the experiments. All the scientific parameters were defined. And one group of rats was regularly administered the Shankapushpi in a particular form. And another group of rats was not done. So this experiment continued as per the prevalent international scientific norms for 6 months. And it cost 1 crore rupees. So at the end of the experiment, it has been published in the journal also, in an international journal, after due peer review, etc., that Shankapushpi enhances memory up to 80%. But to prove this one validity of one concept, it took us 1 crore rupees and also 6 months of work of scientists and Ayurveda scholars working together. But Ayurveda goes much further because it says these are the aspects that enhance pratibha. These are the aspects that enhance medha. These are the aspects that enhance dhriti, etc. Because in modern allopathic terms, there is no difference between medha, pratibha, etc. Because they have not gone to such depth Indians had gone earlier. For example, it is mentioned as dhir dharanavati medha. That means the power of the mind to retain what it has understood. So that retention power is known as medha. Whereas pratibha means prajnam navanavonmeshashalini pratibha. So pratibha means flashes of brilliance. Now suppose I teach a student, I teach him some concept. He says, he goes 5 or 6 steps forward and says, sir, we can try this today. That means it is pratibha or flashes of brilliance. It's a flash of brilliance. It might be in the class of a science, in the science class, or it might be in literature, or it might be in something to do with marketing or something like that also. So if a person has to be imbibed with pratibha, it says, please give these herbs. But there are no parameters to test it today in the modern scientific labs. Because modern science does not distinguish between pratibha and medha, etc. It has not grown to such level. Whereas Indians had grown, but they say it's subjective, it's not objective. Once again, that's a big debate. I am not going to that. So these are the qualities that are mentioned in our Shastras that can be validated by science today. But it's a huge process. So grains that are more than 3 years old, rice and betel leaves that are more than 1 month old, oil, ghee, etc., that is more than 1 fortnight. Today we consume oil that is packed in the plastic sachets. So it might be 2-3 months old, we don't know. Cooked rice, etc., that is older than 1 day. So it is called as Paryushita in Sanskrit. And once it becomes Paryushita, it becomes Tamasahara. So that is why in Bhagavad Gita it says, Yatayamam gatarasam poti pariyushitam chet. Bodhanam tamasam. Then fruits that are ripened by artificial means. Today all the fruits are ripened by artificial means only. So that is impure. So we are consuming impure food only. And pumpkin on Pratipat and such other types. So pumpkin should not be consumed on the first day of the fortnight, that is Pratipat, that is the next day after full moon and next day after new moon. So the atmosphere has a great effect on foodstuffs. This was recognized by our forefathers in a very nice manner. So today, once again, we have conducted experiments in the Transylvania University. They say you have to take a particular herb for some medicine on Amavasya day itself. So what we have done there is, we have procured the same herb on Amavasya day and another day also and tested their qualities, medicinal qualities, and found that what is mentioned in Ayurveda is 100%. So the atmosphere has a huge effect on not only the human being. So that is why this concept is very, very important, the concept of Pinda and Brahmana. So the human body is known as the Pinda, whereas the world or the universe is known as the Brahmana. So the relationship between the Pinda and Brahmana is very, very significant, because when a person, this question might seem a little strange. So if I ask why a human body has only 2 hands, why not 3 hands? Why only 5 fingers, not 6 fingers or 4 fingers? So the question itself might seem strange, but as per the Shastras, the human body is nothing but a model of the Brahmanda. It's a miniature model of the Brahmanda itself. So the Maharshis of yore, they saw inward and they could predict what is happening in the Brahmanda without any implements like the telescope or whatever it is. So the relationship between the microcosm and the macrocosm, as they call it in English, is very unique. And also the most important aspect is this macrocosm has a great effect on not only the human being, but also the aspects of food, etc. So that is why tamarind and Dwadashi day. So after the fasting on Ekadashi day, so in the morning on Dwadashi, where food is consumed early, tamarind is not taken, because when tamarind is taken on an empty stomach, it would actually affect the liver. That is one reason. So on that day, we have only this, what we call Modaga Purushatam, they call it as Modaga Shatam, Modaga Rasam. And then they have some other, specifically they say made with gooseberry and other things. On that day, on Dwadashi day, you don't consume tamarind, you don't consume chili, etc. Because this is one reason, and another reason is tamarind itself has adverse effects when it is on Dwadashi day. So it is impure on that day. After the Dwadashi day passes off, it becomes pure once again. So these are all mentioned in the Smriti works or the Dharma Shastra works. And today we have a lot of evidence to prove and show that what is mentioned there is very much important and it is valid. And especially Westerners or who are born in the Western countries, I would like to say like that. They are ready to follow all these. So though we Indians know, I myself may not follow 50 or 60% of what I have mentioned here today. But they are ready to follow all these traditions without any hesitation. Because they have an open mind. Many a times when even I at the age of 50 or something, when I listen to all these things are their forefathers had told, who can follow these things? So that is the mindset even I have, because even in a way I have been educated in a Western atmosphere when I went to school when I was young. That was the Macaulay's education system. So they will say all this, these are all, in Kannada we call it as Kandachara, blind beliefs. Who can follow all these things? I am busy from morning to evening. I cannot follow all these things. But if a person can follow these things, even today he can realize their importance, utility, and also the benefits of following a proper food habit. So there are several more issues. I'll come to that in the next. So then we have foods that are rendered impure by means of samsarga, food that are rendered impure by means of storage, food that are rendered impure by means of various causes, etc. I'll come to that in the next session. But the aspect of food itself is very, very important and very, very interesting. And even if we follow at least some aspects of this, it will have a great beneficial effect to humans. And this is the main intention with which all the Dharma Shastra works were written. They wanted to help human beings overcome disease, overcome mental diseases, physical diseases, and attain optimum wellness. And also, at the same time, attempt to attain salvation also. So from this point of view, they have mentioned all these aspects. So though some of them might not be practicable today, or some of them might seem strange to us, we should not mistake it. We should take it in the right spirit. So with these words, I conclude today's talk. Thank you very much, and I would be very happy to have any feedback or interaction.
Sure. Dhanyawad, Acharya. So yeah, well, I think food is a very interesting topic. I mean, definitely it's going to generate a lot of questions. And opening it up to everyone. So, Somaji, are you going to start with? Or?
Namaste. Sure, I can start it off. Such an excellent topic. So much to know. And I'm really happy to see that the research is also happening just to satisfy the so-called the non-believers to some level on that. And also, it helps the younger generation who is more scientifically minded to say, guys, there is some. Even if you give a sample of a few, that really helps. I know this is a 6 months and a crore, and it's really not a sustainable approach to do every one of them. A few samples does help to show that, guys, there is a lot more scientific thing in that as well in the tradition. So I'm very happy to see that. My one question on that was, I think you already answered to some level about the Dwadasi and the Tamarind. The Amavasa thing is very interesting. Did they also go further down to find out why it's happening during Amavasa? Is just the moon attraction kind of a thing? Or like in Bhagavad Gita, they talk about how grains have a big impact on the moon, and the moon acts an impact on the grains, and you have to put it that way. Is that something we have done? Do we do why it is done? Or
see, the effect of Amavasya and Purnima on the human being, now we are not very sensitive enough to that. But I have heard people who are in the mental hospitals.
Yes.
They have huge mood swings.
Correct.
In Amavasya and Purnima approach. So that's what I heard, and it's a well-documented fact actually.
Correct.
So that is why I said the atmosphere has huge effects on both the human mind and body, and also the substances like grains, fruits, etc. So the Indians had a holistic approach towards this, and they have prescribed, having known and understood, very well understood the nature of the human body, human constitution, as I would like to put it, and also the nature of how it affects the food grains, foodstuffs, etc. They have very specifically mentioned these things. So I think that is the basis of their mentioning all these things. And as I said, they were not having some very advanced equipment, labs, etc. to do this. It was the body itself was their lab actually. So they could, the rishis who were there, we have several evidences to mention this. They would actually experiment it on themselves. And then after being convinced about it, they would actually prescribe this. They have made it into the Dharma Shastras. So even today, it's very surprising. Even today, it is valid.
No, yes, absolutely. I think it's not only valid, it's actually coming back much strongly.
Yeah, correct.
Right? I mean, it's like a plant-based diets are getting such a strong presence across the board. I think they have understood the health benefits to a point. To some level, they are actually open to just follow rather than then they see the benefits themselves. They're not waiting for a scientific study to come because that takes longer. So they are willing to take it, saying, guys, it's not hurting me. I mean, I can get plant-based. When I came here 30 years ago, it was not easy to get plant-based diet if I go outside. Now it is reasonably common. I mean, it's not at all difficult to do that piece. I mean, I'll open up for others to other questions at all.
I would
Thank you.
just like to add one point. The Ayurveda talks about Dinacharya and Ritucharya. So Dinacharya is the daily routines and also Ritucharya. So Ritucharya now means how you have to change your food habits based on the seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So now, for example, during Dhanurmasam, in the temples, they prepare Pongal in the morning. Yes. Pongal is given early in the morning. So this, which is done with green gram. Green gram is broken into this in the form of what they call Paitam Parupu and then Pashi Parupu, and it is added. So, according to science, when the atmosphere is very cold, green gram helps sustain the heat in the body. So when you see it from that point of view, Pongal, of course, Dhanurmasam Pongal, it's very tasty, and early in the morning you go and it's served hot and you enjoy it so much. But it also has a scientific basis. It also has a basis of wellness, in the sense it protects the heat in the body. Green gram, that when it is prepared in the right way and consumed in right proportions, helps sustain the heat in the body when the atmosphere is very cold. So like this, during Sankranti, in all our festivals, the different dishes that are prescribed to be prepared and consumed, they, from that point of view, if you study, it's very, very interesting. My father used to mention a lot about these things. So it is very much valid, and we see how it has a it's multi-purpose, multi-dimensional rather. Yes,
Thank you. Very good.
Mahoday, I had a
Namaste, Alwar. Namaste, Alwar. Thank you for the lecture. This is Dr. Jammunathan. I have one question regarding this Yada Yamam in Bhagavad Gita. For example, if we are cooking rice in our home to do Naivedyam for Perumal, how soon after we cook we can do the Naivedyam, or how late we should not do it? Is it the 3-hour time? Or so if you cook rice and you want to do Naivedyam to Perumal, what is the optimum time? Because you have to do Naivedyam, then only the food becomes sanctified, then only you can eat it. So what is the time interval you would specify?
A very, very good question. So the method is prescribed is Sukhoshnam. So it should not be too hot. It should not be too cold. So it should be in a way that it is ready to be consumed just as we consume it. So if rice becomes very cold also, we find it difficult to eat it. If it's very hot, of course, we cannot eat it. So they call it as Sukhoshnam. So that is the way in which it should be neither too hot nor too cold. That is when it is to be offered to the Lord and then consumed by us also. And when rice actually it is kept for more than 2 yamas. So it depends on several factors. For example, if you are in a very tropical place like Madras or some coastline, or even in some place like Delhi during summers, so the rice will actually, it will go bad. Whatever word you use, by evening. And earlier I used to listen from my elders. So if rice was to be preserved when they did not have these refrigerators, they used to put it in water and keep it, and then once again take it and use it. So it will lose its character. If it is very hot place, by evening, morning, the rice that is prepared in the morning will go bad by evening or night itself. Whereas in some place like Bangalore or some place, it will stay for one day, next day morning it will go bad. So it depends on the atmosphere and several other factors. But the best way is consume it, prepare it, make it, let it cool down to the level, not too cold, as much as it can be, as I mentioned, Sukhoshna, and then consume. Offer to the Lord and then consume.
Subramanya?
Yeah. Namaste, Alwar Mohonia. Great discourse. I had a question related to the food that is rendered impure by means of kriya that you mentioned. And there is a saying, you are what you eat. And also they say that anna vikriya should not be done. That is to sell food to others. So the hotel and restaurant concept, isn't that a conundrum? Because when we are traveling, we are kind of forced to consume food outside because of obvious reasons. But at the same time, one is prohibited from selling food, So how do you address that?
See, today, that's why in each of my talks, I give a disclaimer. So today we are far removed from our tradition. So in Sanskrit, that is why in a Dharma Shastra work, it is said, Attashulaha Janapadaha, Shivashulaha Dvijataya, Pramadaha Keshashulinyaha, Bhavishyanti Kadovinti. So in the Kali Yuga, all the people, Janapadaha means all people are engaged in selling. Atta means food. Attashulaha Janapadaha, Shivashulaha Dvijataya. Brahmins will be engaged in selling good things. Whether it is today, if you see Paurohityam, it has become a commercial venture. So performing Homa, Stendi Homa, Sudarshana Homa, it's all become commercial. It has become the means of a livelihood. So that is why the Dharma Shastras, they are very critical about people who make a livelihood by doing this Archana Vritti or being a pujari. To put it in a very ordinary word, use an ordinary word. So he is called as Devalaka. In Paniniya Vyakarana also there is a derogatory saying about persons who make a living by offering puja to the god. And also Paurohitya, etc. So these are all, even for example, education and even medicine. Earlier, Ayurveda, they were called Ayurveda scholars or Ayurveda Pandits. So they would not take any money except for what is required for the medicines. Or some very, very small amount that would actually sustain their livelihood. Because selling medicine, selling good, selling wellness. So Shiva Shulaha Dvijateha, the Brahmins are engaged in, they will, that's what Bhavishyanti it says. In the Kali Yuga, it will happen like this.
Astrology, we can't forget that. No, astrology, we can't forget that. That's another piece which is becoming a major. It's not supposed to be told.
So if I take fees and teach Vedas, it means I am selling the Vedas. That's why it is mentioned, even Kalidasa mentions about it. What is that? It's a very, very famous saying. Tam Yasyagamah Kevala Jivikai. I'm sure Padmanabhanji will enjoy this very much. Yasya Agamaha Kevala Jivikai. Tam Jnanapanyam Pravadanti Sant. So he is selling knowledge. But today we are all selling knowledge because I take a salary to teach in my college. But the situation also has totally changed. So it's a very, very complex situation where it's very difficult to say what is good and what is bad. So Pravadaha Keshashoninya means they will sell their bodies. That is how it is mentioned. Bhavishyanti Kalavu. So today we have, earlier what the concept was, they had these Annachetras. That is mentioned specifically in the Chanakya's Arthashastra. Where whenever in all the places when people used to travel, there used to be Annachetras where free food would be offered to guests. Even today, we have that concept when you go to this place like Dharmasthala, etc., in Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. The mutts offer free food even today. In Tamil Nadu and Karnataka and also in Kerala, I am not very familiar. But in Karnataka and Sringeri and several other places, every day 2 to 3 lakhs of people consume. So they will offer free, they will not take any money. So like that, in those days they had the concept of Annachetras, and since you did not have vehicles like today, they would travel only 10 to 15 kilometers per day. And each community was a self-sufficient community. So even the marital relationships would happen between 2 or 3, 4, 5 villages around. So each village was a self-sufficient village. It was equipped with all the necessary materials that was required for health care, for education, for food and all those things. So it is all well documented how India was self-sustained and how management was taking in ancient India, and also how cities were well designed. So if you see, there is a beautiful work called Narada Shilpa Shastra, where Chanakya and several other sages mentioned how cities have to be built, where they have to be built. So what is the water source for them? So how to protect those cities from enemies, etc. It's very beautiful how they have conceived those things. So Janapada Nivesha is there, then Nagari Nivesha is there. All these things are mentioned. So they took care to devise these things in such a manner that a person could lead life in consonance with nature. So now, first we had vehicles, so we could travel 100, 200 kilometers. Now we have aeroplanes, so we can travel to several continents. So these things are not envisaged in those days. But today, we cannot escape these things. So my guru used to say, you do whatever spiritual practices your guru has taught you, and you protect yourself. So whatever is beyond our hands, we cannot think about this. So you practice your spiritual, you undertake the spiritual practices given by your guru, and live according to your conscience. Beyond that, we cannot do anything. You cannot avoid travel, I cannot avoid travel.
Yes, right.
We have to transgress all the rules of Dharma Shastra. Scenario also has changed.
Yeah.
So whatever is possible, first we
the
understand.
conundrum is that, while we are not in the business of selling food, sometimes we are compelled to consume food outside. So indirectly, we are supporting something that should not be done. Therefore, we are part of the problem itself, So that's the conundrum or the conflict that we deal with at times.
So our lifestyle itself is far removed from nature. So we cannot help it today. We have come so far that we cannot go back to. So now, for example, I have a group of Jain sadhus who are studying with me. So even today, they don't travel in a vehicle. They don't use electricity. They don't use this gas stoves and other things. So literally, but what happens? Even to communicate, they don't use mobiles, but their disciple will be using the mobile to say these people are coming there, these people are going there. Because it has become imperative. You cannot escape the developments that are happening in time. Earlier on, messenger used to go there and tell that these sadhus are coming to your place. So today, how the messenger himself is not available. What to But they are still in that place where they are not directly accessing these gadgets, etc. But suppose they want to read some book, somebody will send a PDF, what to do? Then they'll ask the assistant to have a laptop, and then they will see. You cannot escape the developments today. So any other question?
So in that answer, to go further on, one more just follow up on that. When we started off, you started off with a beautiful story from the Upanishads, which talks about a guru who was traveling through the forest. And when he said in Jabat time, the time when you really are, you need to have the minimum you need to have. Is that the kind of the direction we get right now? We go outside, we eat. If there's absolutely mandatory, eat outside, otherwise you don't? Or is it okay because everybody is doing it, you do it? That's the kind of the direction. Is there a suggestion on that?
Yeah, I fully agree with you.
Got it. Thank you. I think that's something which is difficult, but if it is absolutely mandated, then we do. Otherwise, we try to avoid if possible.
You avoid as much as possible.
Correct. Yes. Thank you.
So many times when I travel to different, of course, I have never visited any country abroad. I have been in India only. But when I travel to some some other cities like Jaipur or Hyderabad, when there is no facility of food available, I sustain myself on fruits and milk or something like that. So we have been brought up in that fashion. So 2-3 days we sustain, or we carry our food something from home, or just sustain on fruits and milk or something like that.
But it's interesting. This has happened in the last 3-4 generations. Before that, our grandfathers, I mean, they survived without going out and eating outside. They were.
They never traveled more than about 20 kilometers because they could not travel. Such facilities were not available in those days.
Correct. Yes. Anyway, thank you. Padmanabhanji, go ahead. You can wrap it up.
Yeah. Okay. Happy New Year, Ji, Alwar Ji.
Thank you.
Very happy New Year. Yes.
Same to all of you.
Thank you.
And thanks for the very vibrant interaction. Because only when there is a healthy interaction, I think the talks make sense. Otherwise, many times we have they say active speaker and passive listeners. So that's not the case. I'm very happy that all of you are so much interested in the topic and are participating in the discussions. And also any other improvements you want to, please, Somaji, kindly don't hesitate to advise. You are most welcome. And any of you are welcome to advise. And also any changes you want in the format or some things, you please, you are most welcome to advise me.
Definitely. And please do send emails. If anybody wants the email, please feel free to email. I think we have an email address. I think Padmanabhanji will share.
dslectures@svbf.north.org. So please do send your emails. Otherwise, please contact us. Kumaraswamy Mahodaya, or Subramania, or anybody. Please contact us if you want. If you have any feedback on Mahodaya's presentations, if you need more information, deep dive or something. So please let us know.
So I have just one more submission to make. Sorry for the interruption.
Sure, no problem.
The next January 30th is the next Sunday, last Sunday of January.
January.
So that day I will not be able to have the session.
So it will be January 22nd, Mahodaya. So it will be 4th Sunday, right? 4th Sunday is January 22nd.
Oh,
29th for you. It's 23rd.
Then I think it will be okay.
23rd, yeah. I was about to say that it is January 22nd, and then it's January 23rd for you. And for us, it is January 22nd, the same time. It's 8 a.m. for you, because our clocks are still in the Central Standard Time right now.
Okay. Then we can go ahead, no problem.
Yeah. So thanks everyone. Once again, we will wrap up with the slides. Dhanyawada Mahodaya.
मंगलम गुरु श्री चंद्रमौलीश्वर के शक्ति गणपति शारदांबिके शंकराचार्यर के शक्ति गणपति महागणपति शारदांबिके के काल भैरवर के काली दुर्गई के वीर धीर शूर हनुम मारुति चरणतिर्के मल्लिकार्जुनर के செல்வ ஜனார்தனர் கே அம்பா பவானி கம்பத கணபதி சண்டி சாமுண்டி கே ஸ்ரீ கிருஷ்ண பகவான் கே ஸ்ரீ चक्रवासिनी के सीताराम लक्ष्मण सहित मारुति चरणतिर्के विद्यारण्यर के विद्याशंकर के वागीश्वरी के वज्रदेग गरुड़ आंजनेयर के श्रीवल्ली देव सेना समेत सुब्रमण्यर के तुंगभद्रै के श्रृंगनिवासिनी के श्रृंगेरी पुरिயில் நிலைத்திருக்கும் எங்கள் சாரதாம்பிகைக்கே सच्चिदानंद शिव अभिनव नृसिंह भारती के श्री चंद्रशेखर भारती गुरु सार्वभौमर के श्री चंद्रशेखर भारती गुरु विद्यातीर्थर के श्री चंद्रशेखर भारती गुरु भारती तीर्थर के श्री चंद्रशेखर भारती गुरु विदुशेखर भारती के मंगलम गुरु श्री चंद्रमौलीश्वर के शक्ति சக்தி கணபதி சாரதாம்பி சங்கராச்சாரியருக்கே சக்தி கணபதி மகா கணபதி சாரதாம்பிகைக்கே ஸ்ருங்கேரி புரியில் நிறைந்திருக்கும் எங்கள் சாரதாம்பிகைக்கே.
Namaste. Thank you, everyone.